N- People always say that love makes you blind. I used to laugh at that. I thought I was different. The kind of man who paid attention, who noticed things, who never let the small stuff slide. Turns out I was wrong about all of it. What started as a 4-hour drive north with my kids to surprise my wife turned into the single worst night of my life. One parking lot, one window, and 12 years of marriage gone before I even had time to catch my breath. My name is Robert Calloway. Rob to everyone who knows me. I'm 44 years old. I work as a civil engineer for a construction firm outside of Portland, Oregon. And I've been married to my wife, Diana, for 12 years. We have 2 kids, my son Ethan, who just turned 16 last March, and my daughter Gracie, who is 9, and still believes that her daddy can fix absolutely anything with a roll of duct tape and a good attitude. For the most part, life was good. Not perfect, whose life is, but genuinely good. Diana had built herself a serious career as a regional sales director for a medical supply company, and I was proud of her for it. She worked hard. She traveled more than either of us liked, usually 1 or 2 trips a month, sometimes 3 or 4 days at a stretch. Seattle was her most frequent destination, because that's where the company's biggest hospital accounts were. She knew the drive up I-5 the way I knew the blueprints to every project I'd ever managed. That particular Tuesday, she had left for what she called a 4-day account review in Seattle. Nothing unusual. She packed the night before, kissed the kids at breakfast, kissed me at the door, and was gone before 8 in the morning. Ethan was already at school. Gracie had waved from the window. The idea came to me Thursday morning the way most good ideas do. Out of nowhere while I was doing something completely unrelated. I was standing in the garage trying to remember where I'd put Gracie's soccer bag, when Gracie appeared in the doorway eating a granola bar and said, "Do you think Mom misses us when she's in Seattle?" I told her of course Mom missed us. She missed us every single time. Gracie chewed slowly and looked out at the driveway. "I miss her too," she said. And then she went back inside. I stood there in that garage for a full minute before the thought hit me. Diana wasn't due back until Saturday. It was Thursday. We could be in Seattle in 4 hours. I knew which hotel she stayed at. The same Hilton near the convention center she always used when the company wasn't booking her at the conference venue itself. I could get Ethan out of school early. We could leave by noon, be there before dinner, knock on her door and give her the kind of surprise she'd probably tell at dinner parties for the next 10 years. Gracie would be over the moon. Even Ethan, who at 16 had made a full-time career out of pretending to be too cool for family things, would probably crack a smile. I called the hotel. Diana was booked there through Saturday, confirmed. I called the school and arranged an early release for Ethan. I packed a bag for myself and helped Gracie throw hers together, which took 25 minutes longer than it should have because she could not decide between bringing 3 stuffed animals or 4. She settled on 4. I tried calling Diana twice that morning. Voicemail both times. That wasn't wildly unusual. She kept her phone on silent during presentations and account meetings, and she'd always been strict about that. She texted back eventually. But by the time we were loading the car at noon, I still hadn't heard anything. I sent a message. "Thinking of you. Hope the meetings are going well." The read receipt appeared immediately. No reply. I told myself she was just busy. Ethan climbed into the front seat the way teenagers do, already wearing headphones before he'd even buckled his seatbelt. Gracie got in the back with her 4 stuffed animals arranged in a very specific order. She insisted on explaining to me twice. By 12:15, we were on the highway heading north. The drive was easy. We stopped once for gas and snacks just outside Olympia. Gracie got a bag of gummy bears. Ethan got an energy drink that I let him have only because I was in a good mood and didn't feel like arguing. He pulled off one headphone and said, "This is kind of random, you know." I told him spontaneous was the word he was looking for. He put the headphone back on. I tried Diana again somewhere around Centralia. Voicemail. I left a short message. Light, cheerful, nothing that would give anything away. She still hadn't responded to my earlier text either. I stared at the road and felt the first small knot form in my stomach. The kind you get when something's off, but you can't explain why. I ignored it. Diana was in the middle of a major account review. Of course she was unreachable. Gracie had fallen asleep by the time we hit the outskirts of Seattle, one hand still loosely holding the ear of her favorite rabbit. I drove the last 30 minutes in near silence, just the sound of Ethan's music leaking thinly from his headphones and the hum of the highway beneath us. The city opened up ahead in the late afternoon light. and I remember thinking that we were about to make Diana's week. Maybe her whole month. I was so sure of it. We reached the hotel just before 5. I parked the car and turned to wait Gracie, who blinked at me with slow, confused eyes until she realized where we were, and then she came alive like someone had flipped a switch. Are we here? Is Mom here? Does she know? She was already unbuckling herself. I told her Mom didn't know anything. That was the whole point. I'm going to scream, Gracie announced. Ethan, who had pulled off his headphones, said flatly, "Please don't scream." I left them on a couch in the lobby near a potted plant the size of a small tree and approached the front desk. The woman behind the counter was polite, mid-30s, efficient. I explained that my wife was a guest and I'd like her room called. We were surprising her. A family visit. The woman smiled at that and looked up the name. She dialed the room. We waited. She let it ring. Nothing. She might be at dinner, I said. Can you try once more? She tried once more. Still nothing. Would you like to leave a message or I can let her know you stopped by? I hesitated. No, that's okay. We'll just check in and wait. Can I get us a room? She booked us into a double on the 7th floor. I was reaching for my card when she paused, glanced at her screen, and then said with the careful neutrality of someone trying not to say the wrong thing, I do see that your wife's reservation. She has a guest listed, just so you're aware, in case she's with a colleague. I looked at her. A guest? The reservation shows 2 occupants. She kept her eyes on her screen. I'm sure it's work-related. I just wanted to mention it so you're not surprised. The word landed strangely. Surprised. The word landed strangely. Surprised. We'd driven 4 hours to surprise Diana, and now the front desk was telling me not to be surprised myself. I said thank you in a voice I didn't recognize as my own and walked back to my kids. Ethan looked at me the second I sat down. He'd always had that quality. Reading a room, reading a face. Diana used to joke that he'd make either a great poker player or a terrible liar. He pulled one headphone out and said nothing. Just watch me. Let's go up to our room first, I said. Freshen up, then we'll find Mom. Gracie bounced up with her bag and her animals and chattered all the way to the elevator about whether her mother would cry happy tears or just regular surprise tears, and whether there was a difference. I answered her on autopilot. My mind was somewhere else entirely. Upstairs, I put the bags down and told the kids to wash up. While Gracie was in the bathroom, I stepped out into the hallway and found Diana's room number in the reservation notes I'd scribbled in my phone. Room 614, 2 floors down from us. I told myself I was being ridiculous. A colleague, a female colleague from the Seattle office, probably. Companies double up on rooms all the time to save on expenses. Diana had mentioned a woman she worked with named Carolyn who was based up here. It was almost certainly Carolyn. I took the stairwell down 2 flights and walked the hall until I reached 614. I knocked. Silence. I knocked again, louder this time. And then I heard it. Movement inside, a low voice. The specific kind of stillness that falls over a room when people go quiet on purpose. My whole chest went cold. I took out my phone and typed a message to Diana. I'm standing outside your hotel room. Open the door. 10 seconds passed. 20. Then the door opened. Diana was in a robe. Her hair was loose in a way it only gets when she's had it pinned up all day and just took it down. Her face went through a sequence of expressions so fast I could barely track them. Shock, then fear, then something that settled into an expression I can only describe as annoyance, which was the one that hurt the most. Rob. She stepped into the hallway and pulled the door almost closed behind her. What are you doing here? I stared at her. Surprise, I said. The word came out completely flat. You should have called. She was whispering, but her voice had an edge to it. You can't just show up without. I called 4 times, I said. You didn't answer. I was in meetings. Diana. I looked at the door she was holding almost shut behind her. Who is in your room? She closed her eyes for 1 second. Rob. Please, who is in your room? The door opened behind her. A man appeared. He was probably 40, maybe 42. With the easy, unhurried look of someone who had no idea he was about to step into the worst possible moment. He was in a t-shirt and jeans, and he was carrying his shoes in his hand, which told me everything before he said a single word. Di, he said. Everything okay? Di. He called her Di. I was the only person in the world who called her that. I looked at my wife. Diana looked at the floor. Who are you? I asked him. My voice was very quiet. The quieter I get, the more dangerous I feel, and I could hear it in my own tone. The man looked at me the way people look at someone they weren't expecting to exist. I'm Marcus. I know Diana from the Chicago Regional Conference. We've been. He stopped. He seemed to understand something. Are you her husband? 12 years, I said. He took a full step back. He held up both hands, shoes still dangling from his fingers. I had no idea, he said. And I believed him, which somehow made it worse. She told me she was. He stopped again, looked at Diana, and then grabbed his jacket from just inside the door. I'm gonna go. I'm sorry, man. I genuinely didn't know. He walked past us down the hallway without looking back. The elevator doors opened for him like they were in on it. Diana and I stood in the hallway in silence. How long? I said. She shook her head. Rob. How long? She pressed her hand to her forehead. Her ring was still on her finger. I noticed that. This was the second time, she said quietly. The first was in Chicago 3 months ago. I swear to you that's all. 3 months. I'd driven 4 hours and traveled 12 years, and she had been lying to me for 3 months. The kids are upstairs, I said. Whatever composure she'd been maintaining cracked right down the middle. They're here? Ethan and Gracie. They thought it would be a great surprise. I could hear my own voice from somewhere outside my body. Gracie brought 4 stuffed animals. She was very specific about which 4. Diana put both hands over her face. Get dressed, I told her. They don't know anything. We're going to go upstairs and you are going to see your children, because they have been asking about you for 3 days. She nodded. She went back into the room. I stood in that hallway looking at the carpet and breathing very carefully until she came back out. She looked completely normal. Fresh clothes, hair pulled back, the same Diana who'd kissed me at the door on Tuesday morning. I couldn't reconcile the two images no matter how hard I tried. We rode the elevator up in silence. When I opened the door to our room, Gracie launched herself from the bed before I could say a word. M-O-M. She slammed into Diana with the full force of a 9-year-old who'd been waiting 4 hours to do exactly this. Diana caught her and held her, and I saw my wife's face over Gracie's shoulder. Eyes shut, expression crumpling for just a second before she pulled it back. Ethan was sitting at the small desk. He said, "Hey, Mom," in the carefully neutral voice of a teenager who has already decided how much enthusiasm to allot to something. Diana kissed the top of his head. He let her. Gracie was already talking. About the drive, about the gummy bears, about the stuffed animals, about how Daddy had kept it a secret all day. Diana sat down on the edge of the bed and listened and smiled and responded. And I sat across the room and watched my wife perform normalcy with a precision that made my stomach turn. Then Gracie said, "Are you going to eat dinner with us, Mom?" Daddy said we could order pizza. Diana glanced at me. The look she sent me was a request, a plea, a negotiation. "Actually, sweetheart," Diana said, "Mom has a team dinner tonight. One of those work things I can't get out of." Gracie's face fell like a dropped cloth. "But we drove all the way here." "I know, baby. And I am so happy you did. But this was already scheduled, and I can't cancel." She reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind Gracie's ear. "Tomorrow is all yours, I promise. All day. We can do the waterfront, Pike Place Market, anything you want." I stood up. "Diana, can I talk to you in the hall for a minute?" Ethan didn't move a muscle, but I saw his eyes shift. In the hallway, Diana spoke before I could. "I know how that looked. You have a work dinner." I crossed my arms. "You want me to let our daughter sit in that room and wait for a pizza while you go back to what, exactly?" "The team dinner is real," she said sharply. "It has nothing to do with Marcus. It's with my actual accounts. I don't care if it's the most important dinner of your career, Diana. Our children drove 4 hours to see you." She closed her eyes. "I know, and I will make it up to them. Tonight I need 2 hours. You stood in that room and cheated on your family, and now you're worried about a business dinner." "I'm trying to hold my life together," she snapped, and then lowered her voice immediately. "Please. 2 hours, Rob. I will be back by 8. Then we deal with everything. All of it. But I need tonight." I looked at her for a long time. She looked back, and then I went back inside, and she went down the hall, and that was that. Gracie cried a little after Diana left. Just the quiet, confused kind of crying that 9-year-olds do when they can't name what's wrong, but know that something is. I sat next to her on the bed and held her until she stopped and then ordered her a pepperoni pizza. and found a movie on the TV and let her fall into the kind of distracted peace that only exists for children. Ethan waited until Gracie was absorbed in the movie and then came and sat next to me at the small table by the window. He was quiet for a minute, looking out at the city lights. Then he said, without looking at me, "Mom's not at a work dinner, is she?" It wasn't a question. I looked at my son. His jaw was set. His eyes were steady. At 16, he had his mother's eyes and my stubbornness, and in that moment, both of those things were pointed directly at me. "What makes you say that?" I said. "The way you looked when you came back upstairs the first time," he said, "before Mom came up, and the way she looked at you in the room. And the fact that her phone has been going to voicemail for 2 days." He paused. "Also, she smelled like someone else's cologne." I should have been surprised that he'd noticed. I wasn't. "Ethan, I'm 16, Dad, not 6. He finally looked at me. "I already know. I just want you to confirm it so I don't have to feel crazy for thinking it." I took a breath of the kind that costs something. "Yeah," I said. "You're right." He nodded slowly. He didn't cry. He didn't yell. He just looked back out at the window, and I watched him put it somewhere inside himself, the way kids who grow up too fast learn to do. "How long?" he asked. She said this was only the second time. He made a short sound that wasn't quite a laugh. She would say that. I wanted to defend Diana to him. Some instinct pulled at me to do it. To say people are complicated and adults make mistakes, and this doesn't mean she doesn't love you. All of those things were probably true. But Ethan was looking at me with 16-year-old eyes that had just had something irreversible happen to them, and he wasn't asking me to make it easier. He was asking me to be honest. "I don't know what happens next," I told him. "But whatever does, that's between your mom and me. It doesn't change anything about how we feel about you and your sister." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "Is it going to change where we live?" "Probably." Another silence. "Okay." He stood up. "I'm going to sit with Gracie." And he crossed the room and lowered himself onto the bed next to his sister and watched the last 40 minutes of her movie with her. And that was the most heartbreaking thing I had ever seen. Diana came back at 8:15. She knocked softly, and I let her in. Gracie was already half asleep. Diana sat beside her and stroked her hair, and Gracie murmured something and smiled without fully waking up. I watched Ethan watch his mother do this, his face careful and closed in a way that was entirely new. When Gracie was fully asleep, Diana looked at me and gestured toward the hallway. Ethan pulled out his headphones and put them on. He didn't look at either of us. In the hallway, Diana leaned against the wall with her arms folded and her eyes down. She looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with the hour. "I want to fix this," she said. I said nothing. "I know you're angry. I know I've broken something. But 12 years, Rob. 12 years. And the kids and the life we built together, that counts for something." "It counted for everything," I said. "That's the part you don't seem to understand." She looked up at me. "I don't know why it happened. I honestly don't. It was just an escape. Things between us got so routine and I felt invisible and I made a terrible decision." "You made it twice." Her eyes filled. "I know. You felt invisible," I said. "Diana, you were gone 14 days last month. I handled every school pickup, every dinner, every permission slip and dentist appointment and homework argument. I was holding the house together while you were in Chicago and Seattle. And I never once made you feel like you were less than." I stopped. I had to stop. My voice was going somewhere I didn't want it to go. "If you felt invisible, you should have told me. That's what 12 years is for." "I know," she whispered. "I know that. I'm sorry." "Are you sorry you did it?" I said. "Or sorry you did it," I said. "Or sorry I found out." She flinched. And she didn't answer, and that was its own kind of answer. I told her we were leaving in the morning. First checkout time available. She didn't argue. She asked if she could come say goodbye to the kids properly before we left. And I told her yes, of course they were her children. She asked what I was going to tell Ethan. "He already knows," I said. The color drained from her face. "You told him? He figured it out himself. He's been watching you for longer than I have, apparently." She put her hand over her mouth. I let the silence sit there. In the morning, she was at the car before us. She'd gotten coffee for me from the lobby, which I didn't know what to do with, so I took it and said thank you. Because Gracie was watching. Gracie hugged her mother for a long time and asked 3 times why she couldn't just come home with us right now. Diana said she had to finish her work. Just a couple more days. I watched my wife look our daughter in the eye and say that, and I felt something shift in the way I understood her. Ethan hugged his mother with one arm and pulled back quickly. Diana held on a half-second longer than he let her. I saw her face when he stepped away, and I looked somewhere else. The drive home was quiet in a different way than the drive up had been. Gracie fell asleep again within the first hour, face pressed against the window, one stuffed rabbit in the crook of her arm. Ethan sat in the front with me this time. He didn't put his headphones on. Somewhere around Olympia, he said. What happens when she gets home? She's going to come home to the house, I said. After that, I don't know yet. She's going to ask you for another chance. Probably. He was quiet. Then, what are you going to say? I kept my eyes on the road. I don't know yet. I think you do, he said. Not cruel, just steady. I didn't answer him. We drove the last 100 miles without talking much. When we pulled into the driveway and Gracie woke up confused and asked if we were home, Ethan was the one who said, yes, we're home. Come on, I'll carry your bag. He took her animal bag and his own bag and went inside and left me sitting in the car in the driveway for 3 minutes that I needed more than I could explain. The next 6 weeks were the kind that age you. Diana came home on Saturday as planned. She slept in the guest room without anyone asking her. She just did it. And I think that was the first honest act of the whole situation. She tried with the kids. She made Gracie's favorite pancakes on Sunday and helped Ethan with a history essay and sat at the dinner table and participated in conversation like someone performing a role they'd once been native in. Gracie started sleeping with her door open at night. She never did that before. Ethan began addressing his mother in a polite, careful tone that I recognized because I used it myself. You use it when you don't trust someone enough to use your real voice. I found a family therapist. I went alone first, twice, and then told Diana I thought she should go too. She did. We went together twice after that, and the sessions were honest in the brutal way that therapy sometimes forces you to be. The therapist said we were both clearly capable of more honesty than we've been giving each other. I thought about that for days. At some point in the 5th week, I came home from work and Diana was sitting at the kitchen table. The kids were both out. Ethan at a friend's house. Gracie at a birthday party. Diana had papers in front of her. I recognized what they were before I sat down. I made an appointment with a mediator, she said quietly. I don't want to make this ugly for the kids. I sat across from her. I looked at the papers. I thought about the drive up I-5 with Gracie asking if her mom missed her. I thought about Ethan with his one-arm hug in the hotel parking lot. I thought about 12 years of dinners and arguments and ordinary Tuesday mornings and the way Diana used to laugh at things I said before everything got so professional and scheduled and performative. Neither do I said. She slid the papers toward me. Her hand was shaking slightly. Not much, but enough. I want you to know that I am genuinely sorry, she said. Not for getting caught. Sorry for what I did to you. To the kids. I understand if you never fully believe that, but I need to say it. I looked at her. I believed her. That was the complicated part. I actually believed her, and it didn't change anything. I picked up the pen. Signing those papers was one of the quieter moments of my life. No dramatic music. No storm outside. Just the kitchen light and the sound of a pen on paper, and the smell of whatever was left in the coffee maker. Diana signed after me. We didn't hug. We didn't say much. She gathered the papers carefully and put them in her bag and stood up. At the door, she stopped. Do you think you'll forgive me? She asked. Someday. Not now. Just someday. I thought about it honestly before I answered. I think so, I said. Eventually. For the kids' sake and for my own. But forgiveness and trust aren't the same thing, Diana. And some things you can't rebuild. She nodded like she'd already known that, and had been hoping to be wrong. She left. I stood in the kitchen for a while. Gracie would be home in an hour. I should start dinner. I thought about calling my brother, who had been through his own version of this 7 years ago and had come out on the other side intact and even happy. I thought I might do that. Later. I opened the refrigerator and stood looking at it for a minute. Not really looking for anything. 3 weeks later, I picked Gracie up from school on a Tuesday, and she climbed into the back seat and immediately launched into a story about something that had happened at lunch And the story was long and detailed and involved 4 different people and a misplaced glitter project. And by the end of it, she was laughing at herself. And I was laughing too. And the afternoon light was coming through the windows at that specific angle. It only hits in October. And it was fine. Not good, not yet, but fine. Moving. That evening, Ethan came downstairs for dinner and sat across from me, and we talked about his history grade and whether the leftovers in the fridge were still edible, and whether we should get a dog, which is something he'd been bringing up periodically for 2 years. I told him maybe. He said maybe it was better than no. Gracie said if we got a dog, she was naming it Biscuit, and the matter was settled as far as she was concerned. I went to bed that night and lay in the dark and thought about the drive home from Seattle. Gracie asleep with her rabbit, Ethan in the front seat without headphones, the gray highway running south, and what Ethan had said somewhere around Olympia. I think you know. He was right. I had known. I just needed enough time and space to say it out loud, to let the grief of it sit where it was supposed to sit instead of somewhere I'd buried it. The surprise trip to Seattle was supposed to be the best moment of Diana's week. Instead, it turned out to be the moment my family started becoming something different. Not broken exactly. Just different. Smaller in some ways. Quieter. But more honest, maybe, than it had been in a long time. Gracie named her dinner fork Biscuit that night while she waited for the real thing. Ethan told her that was strange. She told him he was strange. And I sat at the head of that table and thought, we're going to be okay. Not the same, but okay. And most days, most normal, unremarkable Tuesday evenings, that is enough.